Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Jim Butler with Videre Wealth Management, and my co-host tonight is Dave DeWitt of DeWitt Capital Management. Welcome, David.
Jim, good to see you again.
Good to see you. So tonight we're going to start our conversation with a little bit about what people can do to take advantage of preparing for retirement, and specifically what kind of plans should they be participating in order to accumulate money for retirement.
Right.
So I think at the top of the list we could probably start out with whether, regardless of the size company that they work for, sole proprietor all the way up to a multinational company, is a form of a 401k, 403b, or profit sharing plan. Would you agree?
Sure, absolutely.
And at what level should they participate?
Well, the amount that you can put into a 401k will rise as you approach retirement. I think there's some catch-up provisions that you can use if you're under a certain limit or a certain
over 50.
Over 50, you can actually take more and put it in the 401k than if you're under 50.
Right.
I was wondering, can somebody participate in a 401k and have an IRA?
Sure, that depends on their income limits.
Okay.
So if they file single or jointly, there's a threshold, and they could contribute to both.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people are confused about a traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA.
Right.
So now let's talk about the differences between the two, the advantages and disadvantages of both.
Well, probably at the top of the list, the primary advantage of a regular IRA, our contributions are before tax.
Right.
So that comes right off of, gets deducted before you reach adjusted gross income. So that's a nice incentive as to why to contribute to a regular IRA if they qualify. The easiest thing to think of is if they don't participate in a company-sponsored retirement plan, regardless of the amount of money that they make, they can still make a before-tax IRA contribution.
Now, how would that work? Would they write a check from their checking account into the IRA, or how is it pre-tax? Or is that something that happens when you do your filing?
Well, no, they actually have to make the contribution. So the contribution is made to a custodian. The custodian could be Vanguard, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, any number of companies where you either have a direct account or a brokerage account or a bank account.
Right.
You make the check out to the custodian. It goes into an account that's registered, say, Dave DeWitt IRA, and then it just gets recorded on your 1040 form.
Okay, so if you work for a company and you get a paycheck and you have a 401k deduction, does that also, so that cuts back on your federal tax, Pennsylvania tax, Medicare, Social Security as well?
Yes.
Okay, now if you make a contribution by writing a check to your IRA, do you also get the same benefits?
Well, you don't pay state tax on any IRA contribution, so there's I guess you could say there's a savings there, but money coming out of an IRA in Pennsylvania doesn't get taxed at the state level, so there's no state deduction, if you follow me.
Okay, but money going into an IRA, does it? So you reduce your federal income tax.
Right.
You reduce your state income tax?
Well, no, you don't, because when you pull it out, you don't get taxed on it.
I see. So would it make more sense to, if you have a 401k, to participate in that before an individual IRA if you had the choice?
I think that, to me, the motivation is more of a convenience factor. So you want to maximize your company sponsor plan, typically because it's convenient, and also if there's a match from the company.
Sure. Then it would definitely
to contribute. So you can go up to a threshold which is well in excess of $20,000 per year for under current law, and that changes a little bit each year.
Right.
So normally that's the best starting point, and it's an easy place to accumulate larger sums of money, and then in addition, you get the company match on top of that.
Okay, so if you wanted to contribute to an IRA and to a Roth IRA, one or the other, I've heard people talk about if you put money into a Roth IRA or convert from an IRA to a Roth IRA, which means that's actually taking money out of your IRA and paying tax, at your regular income tax level, and then in the Roth it grows tax deferred, but when you take it out, it's non-taxed. A strategy for putting the money into the Roth would be to take maybe a stock you think has a huge potential, or it could end up being a zero. And if it actually turns out that it's a home run, you have all that appreciation and zero tax when it's coming out. And you also have until October 15th, if it doesn't work out that way, of the following year, to have it reversed. So it's as if you never did make that conversion from the regular IRA to the, so the government gives you, I mean, assuming that it was January 1st and you converted, took your money out of the IRA, put it into Roth, and then paid that tax, you have until October 15th of the next year to unwind that. And I forget there's a specific term for that. So what I've heard is if you do use a Roth, use something that has a high potential return, but it also could be highly risky that you could unwind if you were so inclined.
True, if you want to get caught up in timing of not only tracking that investment, but then focusing more on short-term price change versus a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Recharacterization
That's
is
the right
term.
word. That's the right word.
Well, it's complicated. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And certainly anyone in our audience would want to clarify this with either their tax advisor or financial advisor to make sure that they're taking advantage of the right opportunities. But certainly, number one is participate in a plan to prepare for retirement, regardless of how old you are.
Right. So basically, my recommendation is that everybody should talk to their advisor to make sure they're maximizing everything they can to prepare for retirement, whichever plan they use.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the real answer.
I agree. Let's move on to our question. Lyndon Feynman from Philadelphia writes in, David, what are some growth opportunities that you think will do well in the future?
Well, recently we've been looking into some exchange-traded funds that look like they're going to have a good future from this point on. Some of them are the emerging growth markets. Some of them are European. But one of them is an exchange-traded fund, and the symbol is HACK, or HACK.
Okay.
And it invests in companies that invest in cybersecurity and protecting identity, protecting people from hacking into you. So any company that has a business in this area is an exchange-traded fund, and the symbol's HACK. So I would suggest somebody who's concerned about the ever-increasing threat of being hacked look into investing in an ETF that invests in companies that are trying to stop it.
Well, and an additional advantage is that it's a diversified fund, so they have several positions in that ETF.
Oh yeah, there might be 50 to 100 companies actually participating that you can buy with one ETF.
Right. Well, thank you. That's a good idea, and we'll have to look further into that.
Yes, I think you have to do your own research on that.
If you have a question that you would like us to answer, please follow the instructions on the screen.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY-matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Tonight we have a special guest, Tom Runfola of Syngenius. Tom, welcome.
Nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim.
The topic of conversation is very timely and appropriate from what we just talked about, David, with regards to growth opportunities, because we're here to talk about cybersecurity, an area that you have a particular expertise in, Tom, as an IT specialist working with companies of various sizes. So let's start out, if we could, just at the big picture level. Cybersecurity and malware is an aspect of cybersecurity. So help us to understand what is the threat and why should we be concerned?
Sure. So with me, I brought some pretty sobering statistics, some things that were recently released. So to go by this, so to quantify what malware is just anything, quite frankly, that you really don't want on your computers, living on your systems, that kind of thing. These are, from a global perspective, these are the things that people hear about: viruses, Trojans, worms, ransomware, which if we talk about the WannaCry bug that got hit, that we got hit with, mostly actually over in England. The UK got hit particularly hard with that. But that particular bug was ransomware. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But that threat, just by the numbers, so at this point, 50% of all organizations have been hit with something at this point, ransomware-wise. Globally, there's been a 9-fold increase in malware attacks just through the entirety of 2016 alone, which is enormous.
What?
Yeah, there's been a 9-fold increase in all these.
9 times?
9 times, just in 2016 alone.
Holy moly.
There's been a 600% growth in ransomware alone, just that one piece of malware, and we'll talk about more about that in a moment, but 600% growth just in 2016 alone with ransomware, and the WannaCry bug is a piece of ransomware that was what hit about 10 days ago, and that's more than double of what we had in 2015.
I see that these creators of these nasty things have a sense of humor.
And they have nothing better to do with their time, right?
I want to cry.
Exactly. Well, and that's actually where they pulled that. So
what's their motivation? It's not meant to be a rhetorical question.
Sure.
But they don't know who their end victim is. Who are these people that are creating this malware?
Sure. So let's focus in a little bit, if we could, on WannaCry, and I brought some statistics about that too. So WannaCry has infected over 500,000 PCs at this point globally, which is an enormous number. To your point, Jim, with what you were asking a moment ago, what's their motivation? It depends. Believe it or not, some of these guys, these people that invent these things, it's a glory thing for them. They go in the background in the scenes and they get to brag that they released something into the wild, and it's a one-upsman kind of thing. But specifically, when we talk about WannaCry, WannaCry is a bug that occurred, that was taken advantage of a Microsoft exploit. So basically, Microsoft released a patch back in March timeframe, and for those people that didn't patch their system to cover up something, it's a technical thing, but basically it's a piece of code called SMB. It's a file share kind of thing with Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, when they didn't, if you happen to be one of those unlucky people that didn't patch your system and you were exposed to WannaCry, then it made you want to cry, which is exactly where that came from. And what that does is it's a piece of ransomware. And ransomware, once it gets on your computer, it locks or encrypts your files. So it makes it so that you cannot use those files until you literally follow the instructions on the screen. It leaves a calling card, these bugs. The ransomware leaves a calling card, it pops up on your screen, and it will tell you exactly how to get the key to decrypt or unlock your files so that you can use them again. And the rub is that in order to get the key back, you have to pay the ransom. So what's in it for them? In this particular instance, it's money, and it's real money. So
I have a question.
Sure.
So let's say you use a credit card?
Not possible. So what these guys use is something called Bitcoin. And for those that don't know what Bitcoin is, it's digital money, basically. So it's very, very difficult to trace. You've got a digital wallet with a very specific digital ID, and you go and you sign up and you buy these things called Bitcoins. And Bitcoins, their value goes up and down. And I can tell you, we had an instance for a client of ours where, thankfully, it wasn't under our watch that they got bitten by one of these things. It was actually an entry point for us with this client, that we were able to go in and recover a ton of their data because they had no backups of anything else, so we had to go back and do that. But it's a little seedy to get those things, because you have to go and buy the Bitcoins, and then you have to go and do the transaction, and then hopefully you can get the key back. And that's the problem. There's never a guarantee with ransomware that you're ever going to get your key back. You could pay the money. There's no guarantee anybody's ever going to send you your key. The 2 times that we've had to do it, we've gotten the key back, but it's my understanding now with WannaCry that people that have tried to do that with WannaCry have been largely unsuccessful. But the ones that were, WannaCry has only gotten about $50,000 out of the deal the last time that somebody registered the tally to see exactly what they've done. But other pieces of ransomware in the past have made significantly more money than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who are the victims? Are they institutions and individuals like us sitting around the table equally?
Sure. So these institutions that get hit, if we look and just going these statistics, so the 500,000 PCs that I was talking about before, the UK appeared to be very hardest hit. So let's talk about that for a moment if we could. So the UK, if you heard, their health system was particularly affected by this, and it really put the brakes on their ability to be able to service, people that needed health care. So part of the reason for that was because of the people that got hit by this, many of them are still using Windows XP, and the hospital was as well. So Windows XP, for those that don't know, Microsoft supported, it was created in 1999, was supported for 15 years all the way through April of 2014. So, but Microsoft, very nice of them to do this, but Microsoft, despite the fact that they had no more support for that operating system after 15 years, still, because they saw the nature of how bad this bug hit, Microsoft released a patch for all the prior operating systems that were affected by this. So in a time where normally those patches would not be available to fix security bugs because the OS, which is XP, is so old, Microsoft still went back and released for Windows XP and Server 2003 basically all the older stuff that's out of date, and they released a patch for it to fix it. But of course, the part of the trick is to make sure that you stay on top of things, that you stay current with your operating system and your software, and of course that you make sure that your systems stay patched so that exploits like this can't bite you.
Yeah.
So whoever was did not do that patch, period, whether it was in an institution such as a hospital, for example, or individuals that in this case had the XP operating system, were exposed and potentially got hit.
Potentially, yes, correct. Now, not having, to be very clear, not having the patch installed doesn't guarantee you will get hit, but it's akin to leaving your front door open in your home.
Right.
If you leave your front door open and you don't lock it, you're inviting trouble.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the bad guys are going to pass by that evening, but you certainly want to make sure your door is locked and closed, and that's what that regular patching does. Microsoft releases patches that we call it Patch Tuesday, so because they release their patches on Tuesday. So it's important as part of a best practices security plan when you're doing IT, whether it's your business or your home, to your point, that you're regularly applying those patches to make sure that those plugs or those holes get plugged.
You have other statistics, right?
I do. I have some more.
I love statistics.
Would you like to hear some more?
I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So
People love statistics.
I understand. So let me go off of this here.
I didn't like it in college, though. I didn't like
Oh, you don't like to calculate them?
I like statistics, but I don't like to have to do the work.
Yeah, I had stats in college. I didn't care for it much.
We called it statistics.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. But go
Absolutely.
ahead, let's hear the statistics.
No, it's okay. So,
All right.
so statistics-wise, as I said before, this hit a lot of people that still run Windows XP, and there are still over 100 million PCs worldwide that are running on Windows XP, despite the fact that Microsoft no longer supports it. And it's literally 3 years.
That's unbelievable.
But that begs the question, why, right?
Right.
So in fairness to these companies that continue to do this, some people, of course, some companies, and this was part of what was said of the health system in Europe, that allegedly the money had been allocated for them to update their systems and things like that. But even notwithstanding that, especially from the business perspective, what happens is the application providers, the companies that create applications that get installed in the operating system, the application providers fall behind. So that application might not be supported on the next version of Windows yet, so they can't move forward. Now, in the XP case, that gets more and more difficult to really not find fault with, because we're not talking about a current OS and somebody saying, hey, I'm on Windows 7, which is still supported. I want to move to Windows 10, but I'm waiting for somebody to come out with something that's compatible with Windows 10.
Yeah.
We're talking about an operating system that's very old at this point.
Wow.
But regardless, those legacy systems, that legacy software still exists in these environments, and for that reason alone, many of these organizations, be it a hospital or business, for business purposes, they have to stay on what they have, but they run into the potential to be exposed the way that they have with this. So some more statistics. So as I mentioned before, Microsoft did release a patch for that operating system. It was released in March, and unfortunately it's been a couple of months since then, and somebody took advantage of it, and those that did not patch, that happened to be exposed to this bug, got bitten. There is also some speculation that it could have been released by North Korea. For those that may have been paying attention to this thing, there was the NSA hack, where a lot of the NSA's tools were pulled and released in the wild, 100 gigabytes worth of stuff that was taken from the NSA. So there's a lot of speculation over, who did what.
Now that
and
really
when.
concerns me, that the NSA is being hacked.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or Snowden disclosed. I mean,
People like him, in other words.
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, internal people, unfortunately, to the NSA, bad guys that just want to do harm. They make that information available to the wrong people, and innocent people can become victimized. I have a question for you, Tom,
Sure.
and that is, we're focused on the problem that malware creates. What are the solutions, and why are people reaching out to you to help them either recover data or prevent disasters from occurring in the future?
Sure.
What can they do?
No, that's a great question. So on the personal side and the business side, the things that you can do are very similar. And there's a common misperception that only larger businesses can really afford to be able to provide some adequate protections against things like this and prevent them from happening. But the biggest one that is most commonly that's overlooked is an awareness and an understanding of what it is that causes these things to get into these systems to begin with, to ignite them, if you will. So one of the things that's very important is education. So when a user understands that most of this stuff comes in through email, and it happens when they click on something, they'll click on a link that takes them someplace that infects their machine, or they'll open an attachment that contains the bomb, if you will, that is this ransomware, this malware in general.
well, that's where your computer protection would alert you that this thing contains it. What does a scan?
Hopefully.
Hopefully it
Yeah.
scans and says it's detected something bad in there.
Correct, but unfortunately, there's still no panacea with that. So, and it would be great if there were. If there was, a single company or some set of companies that had, some magic elixir that, or combination of products and services that could guarantee that no one would ever get malware, that'd be a beautiful thing. And I would think that stock-wise, we would want to get in on that early, right?
Yeah, I think we would.
But exactly, but there's not at this point, unfortunately. So the first thing is education. It's be amazed, but what we find in our business professionally, we find that more often than not, people are just in too much of a hurry, so they just click, and they're really not paying attention. A couple weeks ago, we had an instance with a client that somebody they received a resume in email. This is a common spoof, a resume, and they just happened at this point to be looking for resumes, so it was an honest enough thing. But people that they're not expecting a resume, but they get an email from someone that they don't know, and then they open the resume and blammo. So a lot of it is just awareness. The other thing that's very common trick, and this happens pretty much every year, somebody releases into the wild, as they call it, malware that says, hey, there's a package waiting for you from UPS. Click here to get your shipping information. And people click on it. It's the holidays, I'm expecting stuff. So during that time, that's where that education is super important, so that people really stop, and it's important to stop and look at the email. Is it properly formed? Is it proper English?
Well, you know what, I sometimes, when I get an email coming in and it says, you've won $250 gift certificate from Target to answer a few questions, right? So So I click on not the target at the subject line, but where it actually came from. And usually it's some weirdo, email address. So that, I've been learning to look at where it actually is being sent from.
Exactly. And oftentimes when you see, it says click here, but if you hover your mouse over the link, it'll show you the website. And if the website looks awkward or strange to you in any way, you shouldn't click on that. The other thing is too, financial institutions oftentimes will communicate with their clients, right? The people that bank there.
Yeah.
It's never a good idea, to click on things there. If it's a financial institution, a very good tip to pass on would be to say, listen, don't ever click on the stuff that's in the email. Go out to your financial institution's website and log in there and go from there.
Okay.
It's just a good tip.
Because there's some pretty sophisticated looking fake websites and
Absolutely.
fake.
Right.
I mean, it looks like you're looking at Amazon. It looks like you're looking at Wells Fargo or whatever.
Right.
So, but for example, in our office, we have on each workstation or laptop, we have Symantec as an antivirus software. So that's one level of security. But then we also have a firewall that's created by a company that we're affiliated with that makes it at least more difficult for something like that to get through. Not everybody's going to do that, Tom, but at the minimum, wouldn't every PC or laptop need antivirus software?
Sure. So let's talk about that on the whole. So whether it's your home or your business, everybody should have at a minimum a firewall. So if you have, just for instance, if you have Comcast for your internet or you have Verizon Fios, something like that, they're going to provide for you a router. Now that router provides basic functionality, just basic filtering of the traffic that goes in and out, and usually it's just inbound. All outbound traffic is usually allowed from your computers. So that's layer one. That's called perimeter security. So the internet is here, the inside of your network is here, and the firewall sits between the two. That's the fence, if you will, or the brick wall. So that's layer one. Then the second layer of security would be, in a home environment, would be what's on your PC. And to your point, Jim, that would be some sort of anti-malware or antivirus as people commonly know it.
Is Windows Defender any good?
Windows Defender is okay. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's getting better.
But that's free, right?
Windows Defender is free. Yes, you can actually download that as if you look, when you go to patch your computer, if you don't have automatic patching turned on and you wanted to dig into that a little bit, you can find Windows Defender and it will actually be listed as something that you can download and install. Okay. Now, one caveat about that, some people don't know, and this is just more of a tech tip, but with Windows Defender and having multiple anti-malware programs, in other words, having Norton on there and Windows Defender, more often than not, when the two of them are there, they will fight against each other, and it can cause significant slowdowns in your PC and from a performance perspective. So you only want one on there.
Right.
But
interesting.
Yeah, but now at the corporate level, or even with small companies, so you have your firewall. Hopefully, that's a business grade firewall.
Right.
And big players in that space. SonicWall is a great one. Cisco, things that other people have typically heard, and those provide added layers of security. So instead of just basic filtering like what your home firewall provides, these devices are even smarter, and they have things that run at the gateway. So there's actually antivirus that runs at the gateway. There's an anti-malware scanner that's built into that firewall, so everything that comes into that firewall gets scanned. Then there's also something called intrusion prevention, which is a bigger deal, and that's a really smart thing because it's smart enough to be able to detect the way that somebody might try to attack that firewall to hack you, for instance, or a particular bug, and then smart enough to be able to truncate that connection. It'll cut it off and won't let that whoever it was that was trying to do something bad talk to you anymore.
Is there any software that shoots back at the guys trying to hack into your computer and destroy his computer?
I was thinking of inventing that.
That would be. I think that's
so our time is up, and
wow.
and it goes fast.
Yeah.
So at the very least, it sounds like if people don't have this expertise on their own, they should certainly seek out an expert like you to understand what they can do to cover the bases. So thank you, Tom, for even more insight.
My pleasure.
Tune in to our next show. Gary Miller of Miller Insurance Associates will be with us, and he has a full-service insurance agency. In the meantime, remember, your money matters. Thank you.